The destruction of Tyre. Ezekiel 26. A long time ago, there was a city called Tyre. It was one of the richest and strongest cities in the world. Tyre was located by the sea, on the coast of what we now call Lebanon. Because it was near the water, it became a major trading center. Ships from many nations came to buy and sell goods there. Tyre had lots of money, strong walls, and people who were proud of their success. They thought their city would last forever. But in the Bible, in Ezekiel chapter 26, God gave a warning to Tyre. He spoke through the prophet Ezekiel. God said he was angry with Tyre because they were happy when Jerusalem was attacked and destroyed. Instead of helping or feeling sorry for what happened, the people of Tyre said, "Great, now we can get more trade and more riches for ourselves." God didn't like their pride and selfishness, so God gave a serious message. He said, "I am against you, Tyre. Many nations will come against you like waves from the sea. They will destroy your walls and towers. They will break down your buildings. They will throw your stones, wood, and even your soil into the water." At first, this seemed hard to believe. Tyre was strong and safe, but God's words are never empty. They always come true, sometimes quickly, sometimes after many years. Not long after Ezekiel gave this message, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon attacked Tyre. This happened around 586 BC. He fought for 13 years. In the end, he destroyed the part of the city that was on the mainland. But there was also a part of Tyre built on a small island not far from the shore. That part survived. Some people thought the prophecy had failed. Tyre was still standing, at least partly. But the story was not over. Around 250 years later, a new leader came, Alexander the Great, a famous general from Greece. In 332 BC, he came to conquer Tyre. The people living on the island thought they were safe. They laughed at him from behind their island walls. They believed no one could cross the sea to reach them. But Alexander was clever. He looked at the ruins of the old city that Nebuchadnezzar had destroyed. Then, just as Ezekiel had said would happen, Alexander took the broken stones, wood, and dirt from the old city and threw it all into the sea to make a road, or causeway, from the mainland to the island. Then, he marched across that road with his army. He broke through the walls of the island city and completely destroyed it. Just like the Bible said, many nations came against Tyre. Its stones were thrown into the sea. Its pride was broken. After that, Tyre was never powerful again. It was no longer a great trading city. It never became rich or strong again. Even today, the remains of Tyre can still be seen. The causeway that Alexander built is still there, now part of the land. Archaeologists have studied the site and found that the old city really was thrown into the sea, just like Ezekiel said over 2,000 years ago. So what does this mean for us? It shows us something very important. God always keeps his promises, even if it takes hundreds of years. What may seem impossible to us is not impossible for God. He sees the future. His words are never wrong. The people of Tyre thought they were safe. They trusted in their money, their location, and their walls. But in the end, everything happened just as God had said. This is why Bible prophecy still matters today. It helps us understand that God is in control of history, and his word always comes true. The fall of Babylon, Isaiah 13, Jeremiah 50. A long time ago, there was a rich and powerful city called Babylon. It had huge walls, beautiful buildings, and was full of gold, food, and people. Babylon was the most famous city in the world. It seemed strong and unshakable. People thought it would last forever. But in the Bible, God gave a warning. He spoke through two prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah, long before the city fell. They said something surprising and hard to believe at the time. God said, "Babylon will be destroyed. People will stop living there. It will become empty and never be built again." This seemed impossible. Babylon was strong, busy, and full of life. How could a city like that disappear? But many years later, it happened. In 539 BC, the Persian army, led by King Cyrus, came to attack Babylon. But the people inside the city weren't worried. The city had very high walls, and a river called the Euphrates flowed through it. The people thought they were safe, but the Persians were smart. They didn't try to break down the walls. Instead, they dug canals to move the river water away. When the water level dropped, they quietly walked into the city through the dry riverbed, at night. The guards didn't see them. There was no big battle. That very night, the king of Babylon was killed, just like the Bible said in Daniel 5. After that, Babylon slowly became less important. People moved away. Over time, it became empty. Some leaders tried to rebuild it, like Alexander the Great, but they all failed. Babylon never came back. Today, it's just a quiet ruin in modern-day Iraq. Everything happened exactly as God said it would. Babylon didn't just lose a battle, it was never rebuilt again. The Bible said it would become a lonely place with no people, no life, and no future. That's exactly what it is now. So what can we learn from this? We learn that God's words always come true. Even if it seems hard to believe, it will happen if God says so. Babylon looked powerful, but God brought it down. This shows us that no kingdom or country is stronger than God. His word is always right. Bible prophecy isn't just history. It's proof that God is real and in control. The rise and fall of kingdoms. Daniel 2. A long time ago, there lived a young man named Daniel. He was taken as a captive from Jerusalem and brought to live in Babylon, one of the biggest and most powerful empires of that time. Even though Daniel was far from home, he continued to trust and follow God. One day, something very strange happened. The king of Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar, had a dream that disturbed him deeply. He knew it was important, but he couldn't understand what it meant. None of his wise men or magicians could explain the dream either. This made the king very angry and worried. But Daniel did something different. He prayed and asked God to reveal the dream and its meaning. And God answered. God showed Daniel exactly what the king had dreamed and what it meant. So Daniel went to the king and explained everything. He told the king that in his dream he had seen a large and powerful statue. The statue was made of different materials from top to bottom. The head was made of gold, the chest and arms were silver, the belly and thighs were bronze, the legs were iron, and the feet were a mix of iron and clay. Then, in the dream, a stone came flying out, not cut by human hands, and it struck the statue on its feet. When the stone hit, the entire statue crumbled into pieces. The wind blew away the pieces like dust, and nothing was left. But the stone that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. Daniel told the king what the dream meant. Each part of the statue stood for a kingdom or empire. The head of gold was Babylon, the king's own kingdom. After Babylon, another kingdom would rise, the Medo-Persian Empire, which was the silver chest. After that would come the Greek Empire, represented by the bronze belly and thighs. Then would come the Roman Empire, the legs of iron. It would be very strong, but also harsh. Finally, the feet of iron and clay stood for later kingdoms, some strong, some weak, but they would not stay united. Then Daniel explained the most important part of the dream. The stone that crushed the statue was not made by humans. It came from God. That stone is a picture of God's kingdom. One day, God will destroy all the human kingdoms and set up his own kingdom, and it will never end. His kingdom will last forever, and it will cover the whole earth. What's amazing is that this dream actually came true. History shows us that the kingdoms Daniel described rose and fell in the exact same order. First came Babylon, then it was taken over by the Medo-Persians. After that, Alexander the Great led the Greek Empire, which was later replaced by the powerful Roman Empire. And after the Roman Empire broke apart, The world was divided into many separate nations, just like the feet of iron and clay. These nations have remained partly strong and partly weak, and they still exist today. So what does this teach us? It shows that God knows the future. He is in charge of history. No matter how strong a human kingdom seems, it won't last forever. Only God's kingdom will last forever. It also teaches us not to put our full trust in governments, empires, or worldly power, because they will all eventually fall. But God's promises never fail. This prophecy wasn't just a dream, it was a message from God. It came true step by step, just as He said it would. And it reminds us that His kingdom is coming, and when it does, it will be greater than anything the world has ever seen. God is in control. His word is true, and His plan will always happen. The rebirth of Israel. Ezekiel 37, Isaiah 66. For almost 2,000 years, the Jewish people had no country of their own. Long ago, they lived in the land of Israel, but over time they were conquered by enemies and scattered all over the world. They lived in places like Europe, Asia, Africa, and even the Americas. They kept their culture, traditions, and faith, but they had no land to call home. Many people thought the nation of Israel was gone forever and would never return. But the Bible said something different. In Ezekiel chapter 37, God gave the prophet Ezekiel a strange and powerful vision. Ezekiel saw a valley filled with dry bones. These bones were not connected. They were old and lifeless. Then God spoke to Ezekiel and said, "These bones are the people of Israel. They are saying, 'Our bones are dry. Our hope is gone. We are cut off.'" In other words, the people of Israel had lost all hope of becoming a nation again. But God told Ezekiel to speak to the bones. When Ezekiel did, something amazing happened. The bones began to come together. Then, muscles and skin grew over them. Finally, God breathed life into them, and the bones became living people again. God then explained what this vision meant. He would bring His people back to their land. He said, "I will open your graves and bring you back to the land of Israel. I will make you one nation again. I will be your God, and you will be my people." This was not just a dream, it was a prophecy. God was promising that even though Israel was gone, He would bring the nation back to life. There is another prophecy in Isaiah 66:8 that says, "Can a nation be born in one day?" At the time that was written, the idea of a country forming in just one day seemed impossible. But God already knew what was coming. After World War II, the Jewish people had suffered terribly during the Holocaust, where 6 million of them were killed. The world finally realized that the Jewish people needed a safe place, a homeland. And something truly miraculous happened. On May 14th, 1948, the modern country of Israel was reborn in one single day, just as the Bible had said. That day, Jewish leaders declared the creation of the State of Israel. The land that had once been dry and empty began to bloom again. Cities were rebuilt. Farmland was restored. People who had been scattered across the world began returning home. It was the beginning of a new chapter, just like God had promised. Even the Hebrew language, which many people thought was lost, came back to life. Today, people in Israel speak the same ancient language used in the Bible. This is something that has never happened with any other group of people in history. So, what can we learn from this prophecy? We learn that God always keeps His promises, even if it takes hundreds or thousands of years. What seemed impossible to people became possible through God. He brought His people back to life as a nation. He gave them their land again. And He did it in front of the whole world. The rebirth of Israel is not just an important event in history. It is a modern miracle. It is proof that Bible prophecy is real. It shows us that when God says something will happen, it always does, no matter how unlikely it seems. God said Israel would return, and it did, just like He said. That is why we should pay close attention to Bible prophecy, because it's not just about the past, it's about the present and the future. And it reminds us that God is real, His word is true, and His plan will always happen.